What is up, Steeler Nation? Welcome back to another episode of The Hangovers. I almost said the wrong one. Today's Monday. It's The Hangover. It's not Saturday. It's not State of the Steelers. So welcome back to The Hangover. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me is Shannon White. Shannon, how you doing, man? Feeling better, I hope? You're muted,
I'm getting there. It's been a rough one.
Never mind. You're good. You're good.
I muted
it was just a delay.
Yeah. It's been a rough one. I've been as sick as I've been in years, and I'm still trying to get over everything. So a lot of congestion, a lot of coughing, but I'm hopefully heading in the right direction.
Well, you sound better than you did last week. So I hope you continue in that trajectory. I hope you feel better. And thank you for joining us today on this really not big any news Monday. Nothing's really gone down. As far as the Pittsburgh Steelers, they released linebacker Preston Smith a couple of days ago, and they hired Scott McCurley as their inside linebackers coach. But outside of that, there hasn't been anything. I guess we can start off with Preston Smith. Are you surprised that he was a cap casualty, that he was cut at this point of the offseason?
No, they ended up saving a few million, and I think they wanted him when they picked him up. They thought they maybe had a chance for a little bit of a playoff run, and then when they realized that wasn't the case, he was really, he didn't really offer much.
Yeah, I'm not too surprised either. When you have guys like TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Herbig out there, that fourth linebacker at the cost that Preston was is just kind of something that is an excess at this point. Now, closer to the regular season and seeing where health wise is, maybe a player of his stature could come back if himself, but I think with what they have already on the table with the outside linebacker position, I think they're set. Health is always going to be the outlier there as to whether or not that was a good idea. As far as the inside linebackers coach, Scotty McClurley, he was from, I think most recently, of the Dallas Cowboys. He's followed their head coach around. What was his name? It was formerly from Green Bay.
McCarthy.
Yes. Well, McClurley was with McCarthy in Green Bay initially, then he transitioned with him to Dallas. And so he's made his way to Pittsburgh. Does that mean McCartney's going to come over? Probably not. Yeah. But you never know. To me, I mean, they needed to make a move. Last year, Patrick Queen, Peyton Wilson kind of fell off a little bit at the end, but Patrick Queen really didn't come on as much as I think a lot of people were hoping that he would. So maybe this is a result of the change. What do you think about the inside linebacker position or the inside linebacker coaching change?
I don't think there was a lot of positional coaches I would have looked at that I thought needed changed. That really wasn't one of them.
Yeah.
I think that it was basically the only two changes that's been made is contracts ran out and, they didn't renew them. So, it's pretty much run it back. And I'm not happy about it, but we got to make the best of a bad situation.
Yeah, I know. I mean, when it comes down to it, and you highlight it there hasn't really been much change. It seemed like there was going to be quite a bit of change. If there was a offseason that change was going to be happening, I would have thought this one would have been high up there as far as, especially given the fact that the team just kind of fell off there the last 5 weeks of the season and going up against formidable competition. I know the Steelers were 3-1 or 10-1 up or 10-3 up into the point where they had their 5-game losing streak, but the games and the teams that they had beaten to get to the 10 wins obviously weren't at the level of the of what they had down the end road there with the Eagles, the Ravens, the Chiefs, and the even the Bengals there at the end as well. And so just kind of see that kind of just go out the window, see a lot of the same old problems that they've had for number of years, whether it was with the offensive line issues, injuries, soft tissue issues. I would have at least thought at the most that there would have been a change with the strength and conditioning coaches, but even that has stayed the same. I was a little bit optimistic earlier on. The title of the show is, are you worried or are you optimistic about this offseason up to this point? And I'll be honest. My needle's probably moving more towards the worrisome side. It seems that the quarterback position is going to be again needing to be addressed. And when it comes to Mike Tomlin, that's been something that he's not been able to address. Whether it's been a rookie or free agency, he brought in Mitch Trubisky, he brought in the likes of Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, who, by all accounts, at this point, aren't going to be on the team this upcoming year. There's some rumors out there that they're going to sign one of them, but at this point, it's not happened. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of almost looks like for almost 2 years in a row there may be an overhaul at that quarterback room for that position. And it begs to mention, he's drafted quarterbacks, he's brought in quarterbacks from free agency. None of them have panned out. The only quarterback that's panned out or come close to it is Ben Roethlisberger, who was developed and drafted before Mike Tomlin was there. I just feel like we're going to keep going into this circle of everlapsing. I don't know. Should we get out a jersey already with a bunch of names on the back for the quarterback position? Because it kind of seems like that's where we're heading.
Well, that's the Steelers' MO. After Bradshaw, there was a long list to Ben.
That's true. That is true.
And they made a point to say, we don't want to go through that again. And they were going to try to, get ahead of that. And I think that's why they drafted Kenny Pickett, which was, a reach, and trying to avoid that. Mm-hmm. But, they've had two really, really good quarterbacks and then a lot of mediocrity in over 50 years. So, hopefully we don't have a long drought trying to find the next quarterback, because they wasted a big window of killer bees and some teams that were really talented because they wouldn't pull the trigger and get a few pieces here and there. And now they're in a situation they don't have the quarterback either. So, I have a lot of faith in Khan and Waddle, but we got to see it before we can believe it.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. And I understand, hey, it took a lot before the Steelers got to Ben from Terry. I really hope, as you mentioned, that that's not the same. History isn't set to repeat itself again, going through so many years without a franchise QB. But at least some, with Russell Wilson, there was some flash there. Right. He had probably a solid 4 games where I thought he was pretty elite, and then it started to taper down. Outside of that, Justin Fields, he played well. He went 4-2. But at the end of that 4-2 run, I was ready to see what Russ had, because throwing the ball it wasn't there. It wasn't up to the standard in which I was hoping it would be. Now, I would prefer to stick with him and develop him and see where we go versus this carousel of new quarterbacks every single year. I think that's probably a better answer, but at the same time, I don't know. I don't know how much of an answer that's going to be. I don't know. I think we're going to be stuck. I think there's and this is why I titled the show the way it was, because I think this might be a season where we could actually be worried that we might get what we're asking for, a season where it's not a winning season, and a year where you may be putting yourself in position to get a good quarterback in the next year's draft, because I don't really see anything. Trevor Lawrence was rumored here recently to go, being a guy that the Steelers were, talking about. He shut down those rumors. A lot of those rumors have been shut down. Not saying that he would have been a savior or anything else like that, but they wanted the talk was a first and a second round pick for Trevor Lawrence. He really hasn't done much more than Justin Fields. It just kind of tells you, I guess, the value of what's out there right now, and it's not very high.
Yeah, I was really high on Trevor Lawrence coming out of Clemson. because to me, if you're going to invest what you have to invest in a top 10 quarterback in the draft, you want a guy with high character, with low drama, that you don't have to worry about, off the field, and
Yeah.
that he's going to be somebody who's, studies film. He's going to be somebody who has leadership abilities and maturity, that guys want to follow him. And I thought that Lawrence had all that. Lawrence went to a bad organization. They brought in Meyer. It was not a good fit for Lawrence. And then they brought in Viggo Peterson at coach, and he didn't have any receivers, so they went out and got a couple of borderline wide receiver ones in Christian Kirk and the guy out of Atlanta that got in trouble for gambling. I can't think of his name. But, he really hasn't been surrounded by a lot of talent. And he got him to the playoffs and won a playoff game. And, of course, last year he got hurt. And the whole franchise took a step back. But, it's going to take some outside the box thinking on the Steelers' behalf to bring in a guy that really has franchise potential. If we don't think that it's Fields, we say, well, he's not a franchise type. I would like to see Fields in an offense like Philly, running the stuff that Hurts runs. But again, you have to have the running game the Steelers don't have. You'd have to have the offensive line that the Steelers don't have. You'd have to have top receivers like the Eagles have. The Steelers don't have. So, a lot of times that surrounding cast makes or breaks a young quarterback.
That's true. That is 100% true. I wonder how, and I asked this before, would, Hurts look the same if he would have been drafted by the Steelers? And I don't think that's nope. Anywhere near. He would have looked anywhere near the same. And the team that you're drafted by and how you're developed does make a big, huge difference, which again brings in the concern with what we have here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the quarterback position is a huge question mark. I mean, I think mainstream media notices it. There's been a couple of mock drafts that have been going on, and mock drafts are what they are. They're fantasy, they're make-believe. But at the end of the day, there's reasoning sometimes behind why some of the picks. And I think there's been 3 different mock drafts that have put a quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers in round 1. I'm not seeing that being the case. I'm not seeing Mike Tomlin and the guys out there at the Senior Bowl just surrounding themselves around the quarterback position. I think they were more surrounded by the, around the defensive line position. But quarterback is a position that a lot of these main pundits are saying the Steelers are going to go after. Jackson Dart, specifically out of, I think, Ole Miss. A lot of people are comparing him to Kenny Pickett. I'm not sure, if that's going to be the right move either. But if you end up getting a guy like Dart, I guess, a bridge quarterback would be needed. And if that's the case, who fits that bridge quarterback position better, Russ or Justin Fields?
Well, you'd kind of want your bridge quarterback to kind of fit the style of your the developmental rookie, so that you can run the same offense and he can learn. The young guy can learn from the veteran. So Dart is more. He's got athleticism, but he's more of a young, in my opinion, Russell Wilson than he is a Justin Fields. His athleticism is not on par with Fields. But I've heard that. I don't think there's any way they go quarterback in the first. I think that's just, people want to push quarterbacks. But to me, I've heard Matt Stafford as a trade possibility. Well, the only problem is Stafford at this point in his career wants to be on a winner. He needs a strong line because he's not mobile. He used to be a little bit mobile, but he's definitely not now. And you look who he was throwing to, and who would he be throwing to now? And I don't see it being a good fit, or him wanting to come there. I don't think he's going to like Tomlin telling him, protect the ball, don't turn the ball over, don't do your no-look passes and all the stuff that Matt Stafford does. So I don't see it a good fit. I love Matt Stafford, and I think he would be much better than Russell Wilson was this year. But again, he's not going to have much to work with.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. And I would think too, just kind of going back to my original question about, who would you rather have there as that bridge? I think if it ends up being a Dart, probably Russ, to fill that role in. I think he understands that role. I think he'd be more suited to take a young player under his wing versus, a younger player who thinks that, well, obviously is still in their prime and whose job isn't to train up or be a bridge quarterback to somebody else. And so, I know a lot of folks are talking about other quarterbacks in the draft, but if Dart is compared to like Kenny Pickett in that draft where the Steelers ended up picking Kenny Pickett, the other quarterbacks didn't go to the third round. I wouldn't be opposed to getting one of these quarterbacks, maybe even a Dart, if he were to fall to like the third or the fourth round. But in the first round, that's kind of crazy. That's insane to do that again. And I think that the Steelers are, I think they overpaid once for a quarterback, and for a team that I've never seen let go of a first round pick so quickly. I think they've learned from that lesson. I mean, this is a team that kept Jarvis Jones until his fourth year, and they let go of Kenny Pickett very quickly. So just kind of want to throw that point out at the same time. I know Milroe's another guy out of Alabama, quick dude, but not really fast like Fields is. I know that some folks were talking about his hand size as well, being even smaller than Kenny Pickett's. The other kid out of Ohio, Howard, I think is his name. I've heard a lot of good things about him. I'm not a college guru. I don't watch a lot of college football, but if the Steelers were to go quarterback in the fourth, fifth round, what would you think about that quarterback? Do you think that's a potential successor? Do you think that's a full-time backup? Is this somebody that is just going to be there until they find the other guy in the future, like Landry Jones, so to speak? Is that a Landry Jones 2.0?
No, I think that he's better than, say, Landry Jones. But again, he will actually be coming to an offense that his collegiate offense at Ohio State was more talented than his skill position players with Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they had mad talent.
That's true.
And, so we always have to think about degree of difficulty and the level of competition. And yes, he played in a national championship, won the national championship, but he was also probably the most talented offense in college football last year, from top to bottom. So it's hard to go from that to a mediocre level talent in the NFL. He didn't have to carry a team in any way. He just had to execute. Well, more will be required of him with the lack of skill position talent in Pittsburgh. So, if they did draft him, he would need developing. And again, I'm not sure that they're ready to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. But again, if the Steelers target quarterback in this draft, I'm hoping it's the fourth round earliest.
Yeah.
if not later than that. I do think they need to address the position. Obviously, there's no quarterback on there outside of Skyler. I can't remember his last name, Thompson or Johnson, one of those two. Thompson, I think. He's on. Yeah, he's on there now. I'd be surprised if he makes the 53 of the practice squad, especially if the Steelers end up drafting a young guy in the later rounds. But yeah, I think you need to have at least somebody there to start, having somebody there within the offense for more than 1 year. And if that's a fifth round rookie to continue that process going forward, we'll see what happens. But let's take a quick break. When we get back, we'll talk a little bit more about this, the wide receiver room, and much more. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a few words from our sponsors. And welcome back. Thank you guys for staying with us. Before we get back into the conversation, I want to remind you guys of our website, SteelCurtainNetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Make sure you go check out the website after the show. While you're there, you can check out all the other audio-only podcasts, which include mine, State of the Steelers, which airs out on Saturdays at about 11 a.m. So you don't want to miss it. Make sure you go and check that out once we are done. Well, the wide receiver position, I think, when it comes to the offense, has been one that has had a microscope on it for a very long time. And the Pittsburgh Steelers just lost an opportunity to add to that position group with, it sounds like T. Higgins is going to be franchise tagged by the Cincinnati Bengals, which is going to be stopping the love affair that the potential T. Higgins to the Pittsburgh Steelers potentially could have been this offseason. Are you disappointed in the fact that the Steelers are missing out on T. Higgins this year?
No, T. Higgins would have been going from Joe Burrow and that offense to the Steelers offense, and I don't think he'd have been too happy. The Bengals are on the verge, if they ain't careful, of being the new killer bees, and that they are incredibly talented skill group of offensive talent. But the problem is, if they don't do something about the defense, they're going to keep coming up short until they have to disband, just like the Killer Bees did.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be a real waste for that organization, because they got to the Super Bowl with this group, other than Mixon's gone now. But they're wanting to sign, they said today, they're wanting to franchise T. Higgins. They're talking about Chase getting maybe $35 million a year or more, and also signing Hendrickson, their defensive tackle, who led the NFL in sacks. He's a really good player. The problem with that is, look what happened with the Steelers. You got all your money tied up in about 4 or 5 players, and that means you're going to have weak areas elsewhere. So the window, if it's not closed, it's closing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want any high priced up to that level of T. Higgins until they have a quarterback that they can maximize his talent.
Mm-hmm.
Until they have an offensive line that can protect the quarterback so he can get the ball to Higgins. They have a running game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm not that disappointed. I would be more disappointed if they overpaid and they wasn't ready for it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. You bring a lot of logic to what you're saying there. For me, I wasn't too big on T Higgins coming over here or becoming a Pittsburgh Steeler, mainly because of the health situation with him. He seems to be always battling with something. Um, I still think of him as a number 2 wide receiver. I mean, maybe it's because Chase is out there. I would think that Higgins would be. I'm not sure if Higgins would be the number 2 on this wide receiver group. It's going to definitely be between him and George Pickens. I just see that, Higgins does more, especially when the ball is not coming to him than what George Pickens does. There's a selfishness there with George, and a difference in mentality and maturity there. And I think that George Pickens has all the talent in the world and could be even more talented than T Higgins, but T Higgins on the Steelers wide receiver group would be wide receiver 1, in my opinion. And I mean, I think that's, it would be a great, I would, it'd be a good option to have. It's not, oh man. You're paying quite a bit for a wide receiver 2, in my opinion. A wide receiver 1B, because I think he's that close to being a wide receiver 1. But for Higgins to be maximized with the Pittsburgh Steelers, George Pickens needs to be better. I think that needs to be the situation. George Pickens needs to be the wide receiver 1. And if he's not doing those things, being the chase to the Cincinnati Bengals, then it's not going to result in the same. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of talk. They're already talking about the top free agent wide receivers,
right?
And Deebo Samuel keeps getting, recommended for the Steelers by different prognosticators, and I agree. I agreed with that wholeheartedly 2 years ago. But if you've watched the last 2 years, Samuel's hurt a lot. He's not as fast. He's lost a step. Now he's good. Is he a true number 1 now? I don't think so anymore. Now, if they draft a guy like the young man out of Ohio State that keeps, I like the Beck kid out of TCU. There's a few of these guys that I'd like to see the Steelers look at maybe in the second round. If you get a guy like that and you have Pickens and can get him to keep his head on straight, and then you bring in a Samuel and with the guys they've already got, and have the right offensive system and quarterback stable by that point, you could see some improvement there. But, again, it's a gamble, and I don't want to see him pay anything up like some of the numbers we've heard, 25 million up. They're just not, it's not necessary yet. They gotta develop an offense. They got to develop, find their quarterback. Then you put the money in that.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of question marks there with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The running back room is another one. Jaylen Warren is probably, he's an unrestricted free agent, so he'll be back, in my opinion. Najee Harris has been rumored to be back as well, but he's going to test free agency first, obviously, see what he can get out there. It appears that the Steelers are going to target the running back group in the draft as well. Yeah, you're right. There's so many holes on this team. It's going to have to be one of the more active off seasons if the Steelers want to have an opportunity to actually proceed forward, to take another step, to actually be better than what they have been these last couple of years, which is a one and done in the playoffs. If they want to take that next step, they're going to have to be extremely active. I see PJ throwing it out there. What about Mozart as a veteran running back? Do you think the Steelers need that veteran running back there? Do you think that maybe Jaylen Warren can, be a figure for a young running back if they were to draft one? or do you think they need more of a veteran running back in that group there, Shannon? What do you think about that?
Well, if you get a guy like Mozart, I think that he's not going to. I guess he can return kicks still. I know he used to.
Yeah.
You need to get a little something out of him on special teams. Now, a rookie, I think they will draft somebody.
Mhm.
You'll get some special teams contributions. They got to get faster. They got to get
Yeah.
more elusive, better vision, and faster to run the offense they're wanting to run.
Yeah.
And Mozart definitely fits. And there's a couple of these young men in the draft that definitely have that extra gear to get outside, turn the corner, and get some big chunk plays. So, do they need a veteran for leadership? Not in that room so much, because Jaylen Warren is. I think he, he's going to be your clear cut number one right now. So, but having some experience that's not over the hill like Patterson was, somebody who can still contribute. I think that would be beneficial for the whole offense.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. I was like, maybe Mozart replacing a Patterson.
Mm-hmm.
That could be there. I think as far as like attitude and on the field and off the field persona, Jaylen Warren brings it. He's a guy that was happy to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. He was undrafted. He went out there. He showed what he was able to do. He made the 53-man roster. There was, I watched a lot of like interviews and clips and stuff of, training camp and things like that. And in his second year, even though it was almost obvious he was going to make it, that he was a sure fit in, he treated it and acted as if it wasn't, like he was still an undrafted free agent. And then that's how he's been treating his position, because he's had to earn it. And when you have a guy and a young man who's had to earn it and had the success that he's had and still maintain that mentality, that's the kind of character and mindset and culture that you want to build around. And so I think Jaylen Warren, I think the world of him. I'm glad that he's a Pittsburgh Steeler, and I look forward to what he's going to do on the field as well. But yeah, obviously we need, Steelers are going to need somebody else. I prefer somebody faster, even though Jaylen Warren is pretty quick compared to Najee Harris. He's not a speed demon. He's not a 4.3, 4.4 guy. You know what I mean? He's not going to leave people behind. And I think you do need a home run hitter out of the backfield. And, some of these guys that are coming from the draft, and how, it sounds like how deep this draft is when it comes to the running back position. Second round, probably a good place to target that area. What do you think?
As far as a running back,
you think second round, or are you thinking maybe a little bit later? Because I know Jaylen Warren, as you mentioned, is RB1. So if Jaylen is RB1, can you hold off on that, or do you think getting one of these high end guys in the second round, very quick dudes, might benefit the Steelers?
There's about 5 guys. The combine's coming up, and then I'll have an even better idea based on what they run and what we learn about their explosive scoring testing. But there's about 5 guys that you'd really want to focus on. Henderson out of Ohio State is somebody that will maybe be gone even by the second round when the Steelers pick rolls around. If he was there, you might have to consider him because he has everything: the speed, the explosiveness, the vision. Can catch the ball. He's the complete guy. That's why I figure he'll probably be gone. But there's some real. This team has an opportunity if they play their cards right. Somebody just said, what free agents would want to come to Pittsburgh on offense with the way things are right now? And that's true. We really can't answer that. you know, when you get the reputation the Steelers have now, you're getting guys who are looking for one more chance, or you're not getting the cream of the crop, the high demand guys. You're getting guys that still think they got something to prove, and they want to come in and give it their all. So you could get lucky, but it's much harder right now. And so that's why if you could draft a guy, you're getting a young guy coming in, young, talented, and hungry. So um, this draft is deep in certain positions, and thankfully some of the positions are like defensive line is stuff the Steelers really need right now.
Yeah, and that's where I was, thinking as well, because defensive line is important. A lot of people were thinking maybe even first round for the Pittsburgh Steelers. At the end of the day, I think that the top positions there are going to be defensive line, running back, receiver, and maybe even cornerback. I think would probably be the four top selections, not in that specific order, but I think that when you're looking at your four top guys, those are probably the positions that you need to address immediately: running back, receiver, cornerback, and oh gosh, what was the other one that I mentioned? Defensive lineman. And so I think those are the guys that are going to be where you need to focus in on. Now, you can address some of those guys in the free agency? Maybe. I mean, running back, I think you want to get a young guy in the draft. I mean, there's so many guys that are coming out of the draft that are young and cheap, that running back is probably where you want to go with that. I would also assume maybe even receiver as well, especially with what's out there. Cost, trade capital, if you're trying to get somebody like a Cooper Kupp or one of these other guys that are on a team like Samuel, what you have to pay those guys combined with what their age is and how much they have left in the tank, you're probably looking at the draft as well. Defensive linemen, I'm not sure what that looks like out there as far as free agency goes. I've heard that this is a deeper defensive line class, so important there, and cornerback too. I mean, there's a lot of holes. I would love to spend all that money in free agency, as Mark says, spend that money in free agency. It's just, are they there in those positions? I'm not sure. I mean, not now. I don't know. I mean, I'm not familiar with everything like that. So we'll see. We'll see. Off the top of my head, I think this is going to be active off season. I think. I hope so, at least.
I was watching. I think it was NFL Live today, and one of the hosts was talking and said, the Steelers need to focus on the offense, and because they've had a championship caliber defense for the last few years, but the offense hasn't measured up. And that got me thinking, Daniel, has it been? Has it been a championship caliber defense? Has anybody watched the playoffs? Has anybody watched these big matchups where they get blowed out and they don't show up on defense either? I mean, it's not a championship caliber defense.
Yeah.
If you can stop the superstars, whether you double, triple team Watt, Highsmith hurt or ineffective, Hayward has been injured, Minka's not been the same for 2 years. Other than that, how's that a championship caliber defense? In my opinion, the only thing championship caliber on the Pittsburgh Steelers is Chris Boswell. And to me, everything else can be upgraded.
Yeah, I agree with you there 100%. I think the championship defense for the Pittsburgh Steelers has been a few years back. 2019 was probably when it was at its highest. I mean, that was when you had Ben go out and then Duck and Mason came in, but that defense is what really held everything together that year. 2020, the year that they went 11-0 as well, which I think was 2020, the COVID year. Yeah, in the last couple of years, it's slid down a little bit. But again, I mean, you're looking at a lot of those core players from 2019, 2020 on the defensive side. I mean, you have your Cam, your Minka, your TJs out there. I mean, and they're still playing at an all-time level. Don't get me wrong, but that was like 5 years ago. You need to you need to continue to get that updated and fresh. And there's been some misses there, since
Now
then.
I'm old in that I watched especially the second part of the Steel Curtain Dynasty. And they were getting older and they were shifting to explosive offense
Right.
with Bradshaw being the MVP and throwing to Swan and Stallworth and Grossman, and they had Franco and Rocky, and the defense was still good, formidable, but they wasn't the 76 defense. Let's put it that way. But we watched those greats, and then we watched Rod Woodson and Greg Lloyd and all those guys, Carnell Lake in the 90s. And we watched Debo and Troy and Porter, all these guys. Okay, now we've watched Watt in however many playoff games. We've watched Cam Hayward. We've watched Minka Fitzpatrick. I've seen Watt have 2 games he didn't register a statistic.
Yeah.
He didn't register a statistic. Now, I watched Jack Lambert many, many times. He registered statistics. He hit people. He did. I mean, I've never seen situations where we say this is a great, all-time great Steelers player, all-time great Steelers defender, and him make nothing on the stat sheet in a playoff game. There's greatness in a regular season, and then there's greatness in the postseason when it matters most. And these guys that we love and respect so much have failed to show up in the playoffs at all. And I mean, that is just the truth. And if it was Myles Garrett and he went in a playoff game and he got no statistics, I would let him have it. And I'd be right on here saying he's overrated. He didn't even register an assist. Well, I got to admit, if it's TJ, it's the same thing. Great players find ways to make plays, and it just isn't happening.
Yeah. Part of me wants to, defend them and say, well, the coaches have put them in a bad position. Offenses have been bad, and have left them out there for injury and fatigue, which are all true. But at the end of the day, you're right. What matters most is production. I think Mike Tomlin is the one that said, don't talk about the labor pains, just show me the baby. And that's exactly what he's talking about. Doesn't matter what the offense was doing. Doesn't matter about all those other problems that she had. In those moments, were you able to stand up to the competition?
You're right. You can only control what you do.
Mm-hmm.
You can only control your effort. I mean, we've seen Lambert and Debo and shoot, Troy would have ran on the other side of the field. He'd have did something to make a play.
Yeah.
I mean, he never listened to what the coaches told him hardly ever. He was a freelancer, but he made plays. So what I'm saying is, if you want it bad enough, you'll at least crack the stat sheet.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I want to answer this one last thing. Afton asks, will Daniels be back, and how much does an Achilles recovery hurt a G? Which I'm hoping is for guard, not gangster. When I first read that, I was like, is it going to hurt a G? I'm thinking gangster there. But is it hurting a G? So I've actually had the Achilles rupture happen to myself. And when it happened to me, I was pushing a truck. And so I was pushing the truck out of the snow, and Daniels plays the guard position. So when he got injured, I didn't see it. He was under the pile of a bunch of people, and I remember them kind of carrying him or walking him off gingerly. I would have assumed it probably happened while he was trying to push the defensive tackle. And so in that instance, it's a lot of it, I think, is mindset. But I mean, everybody that I know that's had this injury tells me you don't come back the same. You can come close. I mean, it's all mindset and things of that nature. But It's never exactly the same. And, Daniels, I thought he did okay last year as well. This year he was doing good. It seemed like he was going to put himself in a position where he was going to, cost more than it was to bring him back. You think there's a chance that Daniels makes his way back onto the team?
Because of the injury, if nobody's willing to throw the money at him that they normally would, because he was the best Steeler lineman when healthy up to this year. But, again, as you say, that injury, because it's so much about the pushing and pulling, and it's just like a quarterback, you could kind of go, you come back from that injury. But in the interior, and pushing them linemen around is like pushing a truck every play. So that's a little scary for somebody to invest very big money in, because he could be lost quickly. And we know that it can happen again.
Yeah, I haven't pushed a truck since either. You ain't gonna ever see me push a truck either. So that ain't happening. But you're absolutely right. Yeah, the mindset behind that is you have to have a strong mindset. My Achilles tendon rupture happened in Colorado in January of 2021. Me and my wife ended up getting married in December. And there was in Colorado, we were going out there to check out the venues. And during that time, one of our friends got stuck also in the snow in a car, much smaller vehicle. But even at that point, unfortunately, there was a lot of us. Like it happened at the venue, so everybody was able to push out. I was directing. I was not going to push anything at all, because it is it can be traumatic. I mean, it's a serious injury, and so some players, can come back from it. Some don't. I know who's it? Terrell Suggs. He had one, didn't he? And then he came back like the next year within like X amount of months. That was pretty quickly. But not everybody's built that way.
Yeah.
Well, Shannon, do you have anything else you want to tell everybody? I know you have the pump your brakes a little bit later on this week. Is there anything else you want to throw out?
No, I'm still like everybody else. We're waiting to see for the first shoe to drop, and to me, it needs to be who's the quarterback, and I hope they get it taken care of, and then we can at least have that answered as we move into the combine.
100%. That has to be answered. I mean, that's the biggest and most important piece. And if you're paying somebody a lot of money for it, you have to be able to delegate the rest of it. And so you won't know how much to delegate until you get that paid out first.
Yep.
So a very important position. We'll be all on pins and needles waiting for that. Make sure you guys check out steelcurtainnetwork.com and favorite that website, because when that news drops, you're going to hear about it first there. So make sure you go and check it out. Make sure you like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell. You know what to do. With that being said, we appreciate everybody that's been out here. Shannon, take us out, my man.